his statement's compelling to me. I felt he's been honest. He was honest, I thought, at the time of trial, although I can't weigh the evidence. That's the jury's duty to do it, but I can weigh and consider his comments here. And so, frankly, I think on Mr. Dippolito's behalf, again, that is an aggravating factor. So as a starting point, I think the maximum sentence as defined by the prior sentence by Judge Colbath is the correct sentence. However, and frankly, it would probably be easier if I just stopped there and sentenced as was sentenced before at 20 years. But I don't believe that's appropriate either. I believe I have to objectively, on my own behalf, not based on what anyone else has done, not based on what anyone else's expectations are, thoughts are, beliefs are, or criticisms that I might receive. I think my job is to objectively consider what I should in terms of mitigating factors. And so I've tried to do that. And so I'm going to consider a few of the mitigating factors with respect to imposing sentence. I'm going to comment on several of the mitigating factors, but I'm going to focus primarily on the two that I think are of any significance. Frankly, there are many mitigating factors I do not believe have much or any weight in terms of my sentence. So let me just comment on them briefly because they've been raised over and over and over again in this trial. First of all, and this was raised by Mr. Claypool in his opening remarks when we first started this earlier this afternoon, that the conduct of the Boynton Beach Police Department is a mitigating factor. I do not believe it's a mitigating factor. You are correct, Mr. Rosenfeld, when you point out that I did have a few critical remarks to be made about the Boynton Beach Police Department. I also said the remarks by defense in that same order were overblown. I do not believe that law enforcement should be about theater. I stand by that comment. And there are a few things that could have been done better in that investigation. But the bottom line is it's not a mitigating factor because the Boynton Beach Police Department, criticize them as you may, in this case, probably saved a life. It was their investigation. You can be critical of it as you wish, and there are points of it which can be critical. I concede that. But the investigation probably, or more likely, saved the life of Michael Dippolito. Because, as I said, the evidence supports the conclusion that Ms. Dippolito had the intent to have her husband killed. That's what the jury found, and that's what the evidence supports. And so I do believe that the investigation, where it may have been flawed in ways, did not cause Ms. Dippolito to do anything. There was never any evidence that they induced her to do anything or that anyone induced her to do anything. She did it of her own free will, and their conduct cannot be a mitigating factor in this case. One mitigating factor that requires some weight, I have taken the time to read every single letter that's been sent to me, has been included in the package the defense has sent to me. So anything that's been sent to me concerning those individuals who have now interacted with Ms. Dippolito, have spoken with her, who believes that she is a different person, that she's matured, that she's now a person of faith. I have read all of those. I believe that is a mitigating factor, although candidly I have to make it a slight mitigating factor because I still have to go back to there's evidence to the contrary as submitted during the course of this trial. I frankly hope that Ms. Dippolito is a changed person. I hope she is a mature person or a more mature person and is a person of faith. I think all those things are good. I hope that to be true. But frankly, I can't use that in connection with the sentence in any real meaningful way. Another issue that was debated, objected to, discussed ad nauseum with respect to mitigating factors would be the lack of offers or attempts to resolve this case. I cannot consider that to be a mitigating factor. State attorney, as the executive, makes decisions about what cases to prosecute, what cases to offer what in. That's an executive function. It's not the function of the judiciary unless it's a plea to the court to get involved in that. And so they get to make those decisions just like I get to make my decisions. And whether they choose in any any particular case, to negotiate or not negotiate, cannot be, in my view, considered to be a mitigating factor. Candidly, the other cases that you presented to me, I understand in sentencing in general there can be disparity, but I don't know the facts of those cases. I didn't try those cases. I don't know what those judges were thinking. I mean, candidly, and we all know this is part of the system, we have 6 or 7 different judges here in the criminal division. Their sentence might be different in this case, each of us, and so we probably try to bring our own perspective to the sentencing process. So I really can't consider those other cases to be of any mitigating significance. The publicity is something I've considered, not because there was publicity, but only in connection with the in-house arrest, which I'll get to in just a minute. That's just been the fact of this case from day one. It's an unfortunate fact from the party's perspective that that's something that they have to deal with. But as I said, it's not just Ms. Dippolito that's had to deal with it. I understand it's been an extreme factor for her. It's been an extreme factor for Mr. Dippolito, for Mohammed Shahadi, for the attorneys, candidly for me. I don't enjoy seeing my face on television in Australia any more than anyone else does. And so that's just been a fact of this case, but it can't really be a mitigating factor. There are, however, 2 things I've considered objectively as mitigating factors. One is, although I do not believe the score sheet is the recommended sentence, and I do not believe and disagree that I should sentence to the minimum score sheet sentence in this case, I believe it is a mitigating factor that must be taken into account by any objective judge that Ms. Dippolito has no prior record, and that's why she scores the way she does. And so I do think I have to take that into account as a mitigating factor. The other significant mitigating factor I have to take into account in this case is the time on in-house arrest. So let me comment briefly on that and my perspective on the time on in-house arrest. Obviously, in-house arrest is not the functional equivalent of jail, and therefore there is no entitlement under our law to day-for-day credit for in-house arrest. In-house arrest is not jail. There's a difference between a townhouse and gun club. And so you can't get day-for-day credit. But it is something that can be considered, particularly in a case like this, that is, for various reasons, taken so long to reach a conclusion over 8 years. And so the time on in-house arrest is something I can consider as a mitigating factor. Parenthetically, the sentence that was previously handed down by Judge Colbath, either inadvertently or not, did take that into consideration, because the sentence of 20 years was really not a 20-year sentence. It was an 18-year sentence, because credit was given for in-house arrest where legally there was really no basis for that. I don't know why that was done. Ms. Laurie said because the state didn't object. That's probably correct. I wasn't there. None of us were there except for Ms. Laurie. So for whatever reason, in-house arrest was something that was taken into consideration with respect to the first sentence. And so I believe that I do have to consider, not day for day, but I do have to consider the fact that Ms. Dippolito has been on house arrest for 8 years. As I said, it's not the functional equivalent of jail, but it is a restriction on your freedom and your liberty. And so I do need to take that into account in terms of passing a sentence. And so my primary mitigators in this case against the 20-year maximum sentence are going to be the in-house arrest time and, frankly, the fact that other than this case, she has no prior record. Taking into account all of those considerations, my sentence is as follows. My sentence is 16 years in the Department of Corrections with credit for 163 days time served. I'm also required to, I certainly won't set it when you're not going to be here, Mr. Rosenfeld, but I can't guarantee you it's going to be before August 10th. That just depends on a number of circumstances. So, and it's, frankly, I'll be candid with you, it's unlikely that's going to occur because of my trial schedule. All right. One last time. Anything further? All right. All right. We're in recess. Not related to Dippolito. I'm sorry, what are you asking? Oh, Mr. Williams? Where are you?
clerk is indicating there was an